as we write, we have to give ourselves license, permission, right? No, there's no government that can give it to us. It's us personally that can do that.
Welcome to Story Street.
Hi, my name is Elisa Maiz. I'm a member of Story Street Writers, and I'm honored to be talking today to Sofía Segovia. Her book, The Murmor of the Beast, a 2010's contribution to the genre of magical realism, touched many readers and stirred discussions in writing classes around the world. We're here today to get to know her better and her writing and the story told in her book, and also her private story and what became The Murmur of the Beast, so beloved all over the world. So welcome, Sofía, and thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you, Elisa, and thank you to the Story Street Writers for inviting me to talk to you.
Yeah, well, we're honored. We all read your book. I had read it before. I read it in Spanish in the original version, and many people read the translation, which is great to be able to have this exposure for your book. And so, going on in that as a perfect segue, I wanted to know what inspired Murmur of the Beast. What was the genesis of the story, and what part of Sofía is inside of this story?
Well, it's not my family story per se, but still I know that my family went through that period of time at that place and had to migrate to the city, right? So this is something that my family experienced. It's a moment in history that changed my family's destiny, and so I find that very appealing to me. But then I started thinking about how this story is never told in the Mexican historical tradition. In official history, Mexican official history, it's never told. The story of the northeast of Mexico, it's not in the history of Mexico. And I find that very unnerving and very, I think, very dangerous.
Disappointing?
Well, yeah, it's disappointing, but still, I'm a woman, and women are never told in the history of mankind. So that was I had previous experience in that sense, but then when I started thinking about the Murmur of Bees, I was trying to tell this story to my region, and because we have no memory of self because we only know the history of Mexico. But then I started saying, but this is dangerous to the whole country. History cannot be denied, it cannot be ignored, and it doesn't work at all if you only select certain pieces and tell those because they're very convenient to the gods of the historical narrative or whatever. And I wanted to go against that. I wanted to break things because then I started to realize, oh, I have previous experience. I'm a woman, and we're never told in the human narrative. Well, now I also say the same thing happens to the northeast of Mexico. It's never told. Those are two very, very uncomfortable narratives to tell. The woman narrative and the northeast of Mexico narrative. Why do pieces get erased out of the official histories? Well, because they're uncomfortable. So I said, I'm going to go there. I'm going to tread where no one is calling me, but I will there, and I will tell this story and see where it takes me. And so it took me to telling not only this story that happens in the northeast of Mexico, because Mexico is such a huge country and we're so diverse. But what's dangerous is that Mexico has told its own history inside the country as a very simple story. And so I think that's also very dangerous as Mexicans, but also very dangerous when we get projected into the world, because we get so simply told. Mexico is so easily simplified. We are stereotyped so easily. And I think that's because we only want to tell one simple story, a single story, as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie uh, in her TED Talk, that single story, the danger of a single story. Well, we are in very, very deep danger. The single story of Mexico is so easily told in 3 or 4 adjectives, and that's how the world maybe knows us. Not as a diverse country, but as a single story. And so I want to break that. And I want to tell the Mexican Revolution, that is the most told Mexican story. Tell it from, okay, I'm going to write in that period, yes, but I'm going to tell it in a very different way, in a very different perspective, with different actors. No heroes here, no usual suspects here, just regular people, and also those who never get told, the losers. So I'm breaking things. I'm breaking with convention also. And I said, well, it might be dangerous. It might get a bit dangerous, because here in Mexico, our history is like, I don't know, like we have our pantheon of or goddesses and gods of history, and you cannot go against it. We have that culture. But said, I'm going to dare, I'm going to do it, I'm going to write history from the perspective of my people here in the northeast of Mexico. And that's what happened.
It's you also talk the main story. I mean, for those who haven't read your book, what's like the heart of the book? What's the Murmur of Beast about?
Well, it's about family. It's about love, the love of family, of traditions, of land, of heritage. And then it's also about a great treason,
Mm-hmm.
because everything happens inside this old hacienda that lives peaceably, but then war happens to them. And there's no war ever that doesn't leave consequences behind. War always changes destinies and breaks things and families, and but what happens is that it broke the system that they lived in, and it happened to them. And what we see is this clash between hate and love, and see what prevails. And we see the changes that ensue because of war. But what we see is people who just want to live in peace and do their thing, but still war rages around them, and they have to try to fend the consequences of war and try to survive.
And one of the main elements of the story, obviously, is the bees and Simonopio and the Nana and all of the other characters that delve into magical realism. Was this a choice, or did it come like organically?
Well, it found me.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I just realized, oh, look what's happening. I'm going to let it, because I found Simonopio first.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Simonopio, I needed the Nana to get Simonopio, because he was abandoned, as a newborn in the fields, right? And then I needed the bees in order to help Simonopio survive until the Nana, who's very, very old, was able to get to him, because she walks so slowly. So
Mm-hmm.
I found this combination of characters that just seemed to me so magical. But then what happens is that what happened was that I wanted to tell this story from our perspective, yes, but then this story of how uh, uh, war and government and all the reforms that ensued changed not only the families or whatever, but even what they cultivated, the agriculture in the land. In order to save the land, they had to change from sugar cane to orange trees.
Hmm.
Why? Because the government wrote, the president or somebody wrote a law that wherever existed fruit trees, the land would not be expropriated. Why? Only because the president or that man, Plutarco Elias Calles, had land with orange trees. And so, really, the region became a citric region, orange and different type of citrus fruit. It is still a citrus region today because they reacted to that law. But I think that's horrible. I
Yeah.
think. I mean, I'm glad they did. They were so brave and so just. They decided to survive and they're to preserve their lands, and I admire that. But I think that history sometimes gives us these historical truths that are very difficult to swallow.
Yeah.
And what happened was that, here in Mexico, we have this expression that if you don't like something, you put flowers on it. It's an expression. You don't like something, put flowers on it and make it. Well, what I did was literally put flowers on this historical fact that I cannot deny, but still I put flowers on it because I put orange blossoms on them because of Simonopio, the Nana, and the bees. And so
And the
there
bees.
was magic there. And I said, oh, this is what's happening. I'm putting flowers on something I hate. And it was so magical because also, well, here we live with such ridiculous facts sometimes. Our governments, their decisions, whatever, they're so difficult to swallow that sometimes we need to explain the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And that was
But
mine.
yeah, talking about thinking about yesterday's debate, right? The political scenario in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well, the political este scenario is just so difficult everywhere right now. And still, it brings home this fact. We cannot deny what we're seeing. We
hmm
cannot deny our eyes. We cannot deny history. We
hmm
cannot permit anyone to erase history because it's uncomfortable. History cannot be denied, and if it is ignored, it will come back to bite us. And so I do think that we have to be aware of that, and I do think that we have to use literature in every way we can. And I am a very political creature. My family is very political, and as a communications major, I synced in everything political communications, and I. It's very dangerous here in Mexico to be a journalist or to be in politics and opine. So I think I used my literature to talk about things that matter to me, that hurt, that should be changed. I want to point at things that are Mexican, but that are also universal, I think. And
hmm
then also, always, not from these big figures, but the little man and the little woman, the ones like us that will never be in the history books. And I think that's why this book resonates so much. It's because I don't go into specific historical figures, not at
Mm-hmm.
all. I go into the human experience and the human condition and what makes us tick. And I think that's universal. So I think that works.
Yeah. And going on the same topic about historical fiction, you also talk about the Spanish flu, the pandemic in the early 1900s. And then the pandemic happens. Like, how much research did it take for you to write this book, and how much of it was artistic license to be able to write and to construct this world that brought the Murmur of Bees?
Well, specifically for the pandemic event that happens in my novel in 1918, the Spanish flu,
Mm-hmm.
I think as we write, we have to give ourselves license, permission, right? No, there's no government that can give it to us. No, there's no government office that decides to give it or take it away. It's us personally that can do that, and I did it because I went into an amazing amount of research for all the novel. But let's talk specifically about this because it's very very easy to see what to talk about it because we
Mm-hmm.
have so much experience today with pandemics. But I wrote this in 2010, and we just had been through a scare. 2009, I think the other H1N1
Mm-hmm. Yes.
flu scare.
That lasted like 2 days. Yeah. Thankfully.
Well, it was a bit longer, but it was
Yeah.
well managed. It
Yeah.
was, and this is important. It was well managed at that time, and I said, the arrogance, the arrogance. I said to myself, "Oh, we have conquered. We are modern, and we have conquered." And this will never happen because it inspired me to write about something that Mexico never talks about: the revolution and the pandemic at the same time. And I said, well, since I'm breaking things, let me break with uh, writing about war with just nothing but war.
Mm-hmm.
Everything happens all at once. You're looking in one direction, pointedly in one direction, and many things are happening at the same time. And this was important for me. You're looking at the revolution, but the pandemic is happening, and you're blind. You have
Mm-hmm.
to look in every direction, right? And so I said, I want to talk about the Spanish flu. I knew it had happened. I went and researched tremendously, but not only in Mexico, since we were a country at war and we didn't have good statistics or whatever. Some newspapers, articles, yes. But then I went and researched in the US, in Europe, the whole world, etc. And I went very deep, so deep into the rabbit hole that I just had to say stop because I was in the I think the 15th century looking at different pandemics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very important to go and do this research, not as a historian, because I every day when I write, I say, I'm not a historian. Somebody else is a historian, and I want to study and I want to read what they have found out. But my point of view is very special. It's very different. I have more permissions. I give
Yeah.
myself permission. And so I went and looked at all these different pandemics, different bugs, if you will. And from my point of view, since I'm always character building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at this in this very particular way as a writer, I said, oh, the bug changes, but the human doesn't
Yeah.
change at all. we are the same, and we did the same things and reacted the same and everything. We had conspiracy theories since the beginning of time, and they just changed and they got more sophisticated because now we have social media, right? But we are exactly the same. It's just that by 2009, and then when I wrote this novel, I thought, oh, now we're not the same because we are saved, because
Mm.
we are organized. We have instant communication, and you see, this social media can be an agent for good or an agent for evil at the same time. It's whatever you decide to make of it, right? But we are instantly in touch. We know instantly what happens in the rest of the world. We are all in touch. We have this world, the WHO, World Health Organization, and they organized us because that's their job, to organize us in health. And so that's why it only was an epidemic and not a pandemic. So, oh, we conquered pandemics more or less. But then this time around, well, I wrote that thinking always about, oh, I'm in this position with a little bit of arrogance, but looking at these people that lived in my mind, in my imagination, and saying, this is what you went through, and this is what you felt. You didn't know it was a historical moment, but let me see what it feels like. And I do feel like that every reader, and I am a reader first,
Mhm.
we develop this superpower of being able to leave our bodies behind and become somebody else and live their lives. It's a cliche, right? It's the biggest cliche. We talk about it. Everyone talks about it. How the one who reads lives many lives. Well, it's such a cliche because it's true. Cliches become cliches because they're so true. And so this is true. I know how to leave my body behind and become somebody else. But as a writer, I like to exercise that power. And so I went and became everybody else in this novel. And I didn't write this episode, this period of time, from the scientific, the statistics, the historical point of view, but of how it feels like. Because when I write, I'm after the experience. And so, what would a woman feel like? What would a doctor? What would the man of the house? What would somebody else? Different people, the sick, whatever. This is the whole novel is told very spherically, and
Mhm.
so I want to see from everybody's experience the whole experience, and so I let it, and I used my superpower and became then them. And when the recent pandemic came around in 2020, I could tell it was coming before the president of the United States admitted to it, or the president of Mexico. I was like, why aren't they talking about the Chinese flu epidemic? This is going to be a pandemic. Because history, someone who knows history can predict the future. There's no better predictor of the future than history.
Yeah.
So I had this recently studied and lived. I lived it, and so I could tell it's coming. There's this wave coming, and both presidents were like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to ignore history. I want to ignore science. And boy, did it hurt, right? And so it was very difficult to say. I wrote a novel, and suddenly I know things because through novels, yeah, we can experience things and bring them forth to real life. And And I think that's what happened. But now, when I get together with readers or they write to me or whatever, they say, "Are you a diviner of the
A
future?"
seer. Yeah.
And I said,
The thing
"No,
is,
because
it's amazing
yeah,
because I read it after the pandemic, and then I went back and I saw the year of publication, and I was really surprised because the reactions were so real, were so like what happened, especially here in Mexico. Even the praying and the hoping that it'll go away, and the people were. I mean, it was really so
and the
close to reality.
desperate doctors too, and the desperate mothers, and yeah, I know. I was like, oh, it seems like even I was like saying, oh, I think I know this is going to happen. I know mothers are going to feel that way. I know we're going to need our machine,
Yeah.
like sewing machines like Beatriz in the novel. I
Yes.
know, I knew things because not only did I research the history, but I lived it through the characters. And I think that made the experience much more real and
Yeah.
much more true. And so I always go, no, no, I cannot tell the future. I'm very observant and perceptive, and I have this really, superpower that we all readers have, and I use it
Yes.
for good. So I think it's fun. I've enjoyed it so much to see how going very deep into history can tell you about yourself today or even tomorrow. And
Yes.
I think that's why I think history and literature should work more in tandem, work more together, because history sometimes is taught in such an impersonal way. Just remember the dates and you'll be fine for the exam, and you get an A in the exam, and you'll be fine, and you can forget everything till next year. History, as it is taught, doesn't tell us anything about ourselves really. But
Yes.
I think literature comes in and can save the day because, of course, what I did was use the resources that were there for me left for me by historians and for all of us, right? Went into the research, but then told the story, the story. And I love this quote by Rudyard Kipling, and I'm just paraphrasing. I'm
Hmm.
Rudyard Kipling, and I don't have perfect recall, but he says that if history were told as a story, nobody would forget. And I go a bit further, and not only you would not forget, but you would connect and you would
Hmm.
make it yours. So this is what I hope happens to the readers in this when they read this novel, is this voyage to a faraway land, to a faraway time, and faraway lives, and live them. I hope it happens when they read this novel.
Talking about something that you mentioned, that this story is like a sphere. So tell me about your take on craft. How did you construct the Murmur of Bees? Like what was your your craft, your structure, your internal way of writing this?
Well, the first decision was I'm going to tell it all. And this is very important because I was saying at the beginning, my truths in different ways are never told in my country. As a
Hmm.
woman, as a person from this region, different ways. As someone uh, uh, whose grandfather was a landowner, our story is never told. And so there's this narrative in Mexico that wins every time because it's the official history, and it's a story from the South. It's a true story, but it is the South. The Northeast is never told. And so I wanted to say, I'm going to tell this story from my point of view. That's fine. But I cannot do what's been done to me. I have to tell it whole, because when you tell a story in such a linear way, you live out many perspectives and many truths. And I do think that there are truths that coincide in such a diverse country, historical truths that coincide in such a diverse country as Mexico. And so I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to leave out the Southern perspective. It's important. It's, it's the one that's always been told. It doesn't mean it's not true. It's true, but mine is also true. So what do? I want to tell this story as if every perspective mattered. And so it is a very, very spheric story, but it is also full of spirals, different little spirals. You get to see one big event from different perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
because they all matter, because they all affect one another. And if you only tell one perspective, then the others seem not to matter, or you don't get the whole picture. And so I wanted to try to deliver the whole picture, and that's it. Also, the structure of the novel is very much in that sense. All the different narrators in this story have a job to do. They have a meaning, and it's also this sense of sometimes we live through life, and this is something that always I have. I like to explore this all the time. It's not the first time. Also, in my novel Huracan, Hurricane,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
do this. I explore different perspectives. And sometimes I think in life, in real life, we feel like our perspective is truth, right? And our perspective is the whole world. And so how this story is told is, in a way, a character saying, "This is what I remember, and this is what my subconscious knows," right? And so this way, these two narrators at the beginning that become different at the end get to see the whole picture because they observe. And that only happens in literature, actually, but
Mm-hmm.
that's freedom I took. I gave myself that freedom to give them that power because of Simonopio, because he's magical. And Simonopio, as a teacher, taught this to our narrator, and I loved to be able. It was a risk. It's a different
Mm-hmm.
way of telling a story, I know, but it worked for me, and it worked at the end. This big risk I took, this big bet, and it worked, and it made for me the story really close the circle.
Mm-hmm. And what about your writing for you as a profession? Like, what do you have a schedule? Do you have a time? Do you need music? Do you need silence? Like, how you work to be able to produce your writing?
Well, I am not a naturally disciplined person. So I have to embrace this discipline and hold it very tight and make myself do and uh, sit at my desk and do stuff, because life is so amazing and life happens everywhere else, not right here. This is my office. This is also my living room, and
Mm-hmm.
my dog comes by, and life is so distracting. And so what I think I do have this advantage. I learned to write professionally when my kids were very young, and I had to take them to ballet and to football, soccer practice, to all their little things. And I had to steal away this little periods of time, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, right here, right in the car while I waited for them, or just wait and just think about the story, or uh, just come home and have 15 minutes and write the 15 minutes I have. So I think I developed a skill to be able to concentrate in just an instant. I don't have that so much anymore because my kids are grown, and I do now appreciate being having this alone time or whatever. But what I found out was that I needed to use the time when they were away in school, or then older when they were away at the office. My husband too. And I said, okay, I'm going to have office hours too. I didn't have a job before this, and this is my job. So I said to myself, you need to find your writing time. And I do think this is very important. When will you write? You have to be very decisive about this. And I had all this time at home in my office. I just moved here, so this is a new space. But and I said, I'm going to have office hours. They go away to school or to their jobs or whatever, and I'm going to write. And they come home back from for lunch, and I'm going to have lunch, and then they go back to their things in the afternoon, and I'm going to write. And then they come home, and that's my day. But then that can change, because when a novel grabs you, you don't have to remember, you don't have to remind yourself about discipline. That just went out the window, because inspiration, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I think, is the one that says this, but I think this is also very universal. Inspiration does exist, but you have to grab it and you have to sit down and write. But when that happens, when inspiration grabs you, you go out and grab inspiration, that's fine, but then inspiration grabs you and you don't want to get up from the chair. And that happened to me by the end of the Murmur of Bees, or even Tears of Amber. When I was writing Tears of Amber, so I was in a frenzy, really. And my family would come and say, aren't you going to eat? You have to eat and you have to come. And I was in this frenzy because I had a date, a very limited time in which to write it. And so I wrote 16 hours a day.
Wow.
And I also do this. I don't like to research and then write. I write while I research, and I research while I write, because I find that they both detonate questions. The writing detonates a question. The research detonates an answer that surprises me, and that's amazing. And it detonates my imagination, and I go back to writing. So it's a spiral too. I love spiral. And that's when you say, I'm in the zone. I love the zone.
And are you a planner, or are you the sort that knows more or less where the story is going to go, and then you explore? Do you have an ending in mind, more or less? How do you go about your writing?
I'm very much a free soul, but I do believe in having an ending.
Okay.
Absolutely. Where do you want to take your story? If you don't know where you want to take your story, you will get lost. I absolutely believe that. And for me, having that uh, end in sight, always in sight, lets me explore on the way, and I have so much fun. And I find these amazing finds. Like Simonopio was a find. I did want to have a character who was the companion of the narrator. Of course, I did know that in the beginning, but I didn't know Simonopio was going to be the main character in this novel. But
Wow.
I just said, okay, as long as I get to the end, as I want to get to the end, and as long as I preserve the some type of storyline and history, the chronology of things that I cannot change. So I did have this connected dots type of thing because it's the history, right? I didn't know. Oh, the revolution starts. Oh, then there's this law that comes to fruition, and then this happens. But it was outside of me. I just said I want to respect that timeline. I might, because I do give myself freedoms. I made it a little bit shorter in time. I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
about the dates. It's just that it happened and it in that order.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're not going to take an exam after this novel at all, it's not a history lesson at all. And so, whatever else, I said I'm going to explore. And whatever works for my novel, I will use. And whatever I find in my research, I will use. And so I did let the research to detonate my imagination and more questions. And I started out saying to myself, "Oh, the revolution! I know the revolution. It's like I've studied it since I was in grade school, right?" And then realizing, no, no, you don't, because even when you're so interested and whatever, did you ask the right questions? And I do think that as we write, we have to let these questions come forth and enrich us. And that's what I do. But I do know that this method of mine is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that in the beginning, we have to know ourselves. Each writer has to know his or herself and say, what's my method? What works for me? I know this method of mine might seem crazy for somebody else, somebody who's more schematic and more organized and more graphics type of person. I would go nuts with that other method. It would kill the process, my imagination. I just like going into my stories and just feeling like I'm the first reader, and I let it. But I do believe even when I do this, I have a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't lose the fact that a story has to have a structure and that characters need to have an arc and this type of things. I don't lose sight of that and the ending and I do strategize a lot
Mm-hmm.
because the strategies is it's like having a map, right? I know where I'm going. I might explore a bit, but I know how to come back to the main road. And I have a lot of fun going on these tangents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what I go through what I find in those tangents enrich the story, because even as I'm telling the story of one family, I'm also telling the story of one region. I'm also telling the story of the whole country, right? And so, okay, it's the family, but let me show you where the family lives. And so, I find that interesting. I go there, and what I like, and I think that makes the story better and advances the story in a way that we can even understand our characters better. I I let it.
You mentioned that you are your first reader. So besides yourself, are you writing for someone in particular? Do you have an audience in mind, or do you just let it, just like what speaks to you?
I think it's a mistake to write for specific audiences. I don't do it. I write as a human being for human beings. That's what I think. Well, that's when I sit to write. That's what I envision. But at the same time, I do believe that we do have to write with hope to be read. So it's not as those authors out there who say, I don't care about the reader. I don't care if anybody reads me. I write for myself. Well, yeah, you do have to write for yourself, but I also think that it's good that we write
Yeah.
with hope to be read, because a novel is like a message. And I'm a communications major, so it's important to me to think that what I'm writing matters. And what I'm writing makes me human, because in the human experience, this the communication cycle makes us human. The emisser, the writer, writes a novel, the message, sends it out to the world, maybe in a message in a bottle or in a novel or whatever, and the emisser wants that message to get to the receptor, and he or she wants the message to mean something to the receptor, and wants this back and forth. And that's what I think makes us human, our communications. And when I'm writing, I'm hoping, always hoping, that my message gets to somebody who wants to open and read my message. And I think that's for me. At the same time, when I'm hoping for a reader, I'm not hoping for a specific reader. I'm not hoping to please the reader. I am writing what I need to write. The message is my own. So these two things can happen, but you cannot get caught in just thinking about the reader. Oh, the readers now want to read about vampires, and so everybody writes about vampires. Vampires. Everybody wants to read about vampires or zombies or whatever, and you cannot get caught in that.
Yeah.
You have to always know what is your message, and write it with hope to be read. But then there's also this third type of writing that happens. I'm not sure in the US, but in Latin America happens a lot, when authors write for judges, because there are so many prizes here, literary prizes, and it could be that you get trapped into that uh, cyclone, just writing for the judges that read those prizes, and writing what the type of writing, the style in writing, or the words that will make you look elegant for that type of reader that are judges, in order to get in the prize. And so that's also, I think, a big mistake. That's even, I think, the worst mistake, because that's even writing for an even smaller audience.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, okay, the judges judged you and you were at first prize, but there are no readers for your literature, right? So I think that always you have to be true to yourself and hope.
And hope. Now, your hope became a reality because the Murmur of the Beast took off. El Murmur de las Abejas, like talking about the Spanish version. So, can you tell me a little bit about how the journey of the book? Because it started in Spanish, you published here in Mexico, and then it started to take off. And then just to know a little bit about the process, like the journey was more or less.
Yeah, well, it was even a bit more hazardous than that, because I'm from Monterrey, I'm from the Northeast. And since we're not in the history books, we're not even in the imaginary of this country, right? It's difficult. Everything happens in the center of this country, Mexico City, yes, but absolutely. But then only the center of this country of Mexico gets told, but also who has the right to write novels, right? Monterrey was never very well known for its literature. We are very an industrial, very modern city, very work uh,
Oriented.
oriented, yes. And getting to Mexico City was very difficult. People today ask me if it was difficult to get published being a woman, and I say, oh, it was more difficult getting published being from Monterrey, and because location in Mexico matters a lot. And so my first novel is Huracan. It's not the Murmur of Peace. And Huracan, it's my only novel that's not translated, by the way. Um, Huracan had to wait for 10 years before it got published here in Monterrey, because the big publishers in Mexico City wouldn't even give it a glance. And so 10 years later, here in Monterrey, it got published, a small publication. But then I got a bit more lucky with the Murmur of Peace, because by then we had the Google thing going on full steam. And what happens is that now you don't send your novel out in the manuscript, the big envelope and the manuscript. No, now you send it through internet, through email. And now they don't know where you're sending your novel from. So that was a great advantage. And because the first time I sent my novel, well, my envelope said Sofía Segovia from Monterrey. And I do know now that they would even have laughed, because what would a woman from Monterrey have to tell us?
Yeah.
Nothing happens in Monterrey. And so by the Murmur of Peace, the editor didn't know where the novel came from, and she opened it and liked the first 10-15 pages and asked for the whole thing. And then she read it, liked it. We were signing a contract in 2 months, so it was pretty easy by then. But what happened was that when I went to sign, she did tell me, because I asked, when will the novel get published, and when will it get published in Latin America, and when will it get published in English and Spain? And I was hoping, right? And she told me, don't dream so much. You are from the Northeast. I like the story, but I don't know if the rest of Mexico will like it, because it's so regional. It's so regional that, well, I don't know if you're going to convince the rest of Mexico, because your novel is regional. And I did tell her right then, and I'm still thankful to have had that insight and that agility to answer. You know what? Literature is a voyage. I've been to the whole world, and I've been even to space, because literature is a voyage. And there's no novel in the history of humankind that hasn't been regional. All novels are regional. And if I go to Sweden to read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or France and read Les Miserables, why wouldn't a Russian want to come to Linares and read The Murmur of Peace? And so that's what happened. It was difficult to get the ball rolling. It was difficult to get my publishing house here, Penguin Random House, to believe that this could happen. And what happened was that there was this translator, English man, who translated from Spanish to English, who read El Murmullo de las Abejas, who loved it, who wrote to me and said, you know what, I want to translate a few pages and send it as a query to Amazon Crossing. Because Amazon Crossing at that time was looking for talent, for talent of the world to translate into English, because the difficulty in getting translated to English is enormous. Because in English, they publish so much.
Mm-hmm.
Only 3% of what they publish is translation from literary translation from the whole world, not only Mexico. Or no, 3% of what gets published in English is translations from the world.
Wow.
So getting in that door is amazingly difficult. But he knocked on the right door and they opened it and they loved the novel. And it came out in 2019. And it opened, not only did it open the English language for me, but it opened all the other languages that are happening right now. There's 20 translations. And it's been amazing. But it happened because the first language was English. That's so miraculous, really. It's because sometimes amazing thing happen, and you have to hope.
Yeah.
And what happened was that Simon Bruni, who's my translator since then, he's amazing. He's an amazing translator. Even then, even at that, I got very lucky. He just picked a strange book, from Mexico, and loved it. So it's also something of luck and a little bit of this and a little bit of magic here and there, and here we are.
Yeah. And I mean, how did it feel? What happened to Sofia after this success, like having all of this book sold and all of these languages and getting all of this attention? What was the experience like?
Well, the thing is that it got published in English, and pretty soon the pandemic happened.
Mm.
And then it got translated into all these other languages. And what hasn't happened very much is travel.
Mm.
And I do love to travel, and I'm still stuck here. But something very good that happened with the pandemic is that we realized that we can have our little sandals here and travel to Israel or to New York or wherever, and talk to people without moving from our chair,
Like
right?
today.
And
Yeah.
so what's been amazing is that I've been in like 5 or 6 different time zones at the same time through these platforms, and it's been amazing because I don't change my shoes. I do wear pants. I'm not in shorts, but I all through the pandemic I wore these little sandals. I told my kids, look, these are my pandemic sandals. I went to Dubai today
Yeah.
with my sandals.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and to India and to Singapore, and it's so easy to get in touch today. So that's what happened. It's not only the novel in Bulgarian or in Germany. It's a bestseller in Germany, actually.
Wow.
But it's not only that; it's the connection that we can have now,
Yeah.
because it's so difficult to travel to all those places. But I get notes and I get letters and reviews or whatever, and I love getting in touch. So what's happening is that my little bottle message in a bottle is working.
Mm-hmm.
It's working, and it's not limited to my country. It's what I told them was that at that point, that time I was telling you about, it's literature is an invitation to travel, and why wouldn't they want to? And so now many people know about Linares and Monterrey
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and connect with the story and get reminded about their mothers in Russia or in Bulgaria or Romania or wherever, Germany. And I think that's what we all share. And it's been an amazing experience to see that we share our humanity, the human experience. It's universal. And there shouldn't be any passports or visas for literature. Think we should all read the world. And it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. And what's happened is that I have less time to write. But this novel is about to turn 10 years.
Wow.
It's the 10-year anniversary next year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a new edition and
Amazing.
illustrated edition. And I'm going
That's
to love.
yeah,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely.
Yes, and I'm writing. I'm working on the script for the series,
Oh, really?
for audio series,
Oh,
for
amazing.
Audible.
Yeah.
Now it's in Spanish, and then it's going to get translated into English. I hope Simon Bruni gets translated too. And it's been an amazing opportunity too, because it's my opportunity to take a look at the story I wrote and have to deliver it through action, live
Mm-hmm.
action, and not live, but like a theater type of
Mm-hmm.
situation, and still transmit the story, the spirit of the story, the spirit of the characters, and it's been amazing.
So, Tears of Amber was already written by the time that the Murmur of Bees took off, or did you write it after?
No, that was after. That was
After.
after. I first wrote Huracan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Murmur of Bees, and
Mm-hmm.
then Tears of.
And was there any pressure to write to follow up Murmur of Bees after everything that happened? Did that
Well,
change a little bit?
when 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 my editor read the novel, and then she had to present it to committee, and then they said, okay, yeah, let's, it sounds good. But then they read it and they loved it, and they made this big plan for it, and it was big. It's in Mexico, first editions come out with maybe 5,000 copies, and that's big. Mine came out with 30,000. So they started to believe too, and
Okay.
it was good. But the thing is that they when they liked it, and they said, well, we have to do something bigger with this novel and this author, and we have to know what else she has. And so they asked me, what do you have? What else do you have? We want it. We want it. And so I told them about Huracan.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them about a novel I was starting, Peregrinos, Tears of Amber.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, send them to us. We want them, the contract. We'll send out the contracts. And they didn't even read them.
Wow.
So a time later, a year later, they published Huracan. And then a year later, they said, okay, what about the other novel? Well, I haven't been writing because I've been traveling a lot.
Promoting. Uh-huh.
Even at the beginning, I went to like press, ¿cómo se dice? Tours.
Sure.
I
Mm-hmm.
went touring for a month here and a month there, and I'm a communication specialist that didn't ever want to grab a microphone before. I had to learn. And so it was like a process for me too, a learning process. But then they said, we want your novel, Tears of Amber. When can you have it? Can you have it for October? And I said, okay. And this was July. And that's why I told you that I had to go into a frenzy.
16 hours. Yeah.
Shit. And it was fun, but I was so exhausted by
Mm-hmm.
the end. I was so exhausted because when I write, I do like to go into the zone. I mean, the zone is going away, leaving your body as a reader, and that novel is so intense. It was intense for me, and by the end, I was exhausted. And then, well, and then I wrote one that is nonfiction, the
Mhm.
history of Monterrey, and that was also fun. But I had to go and write the most difficult book I have ever written
I
because
make yeah.
it's so. I couldn't move. I couldn't budge very much.
Mhm.
I do like to break things, and so it was very. Um, I don't know. It was. I learned a lot right there because I said I have to be more academic, okay. But then I said, you know what? I'm still a novelist, and did say, you know what? In the book, I'm a novelist, and I'm going to invite you to imagine what happened where the history books don't cover. And so it was fun. It was fun too. I enjoy it.
And what are you working on now? Besides the series, the audio series.
My second nonfiction is coming out in September, and it's a manual for writers. And the thing is that there's a lot of literature for writers in English, but there's not much in Spanish, not much that really works for me. And so I think there's a lot of aspiring writers out there who don't know how to begin. And so this is a manual for beginners in order for them to learn to write stories that work, because you
Nice.
can sit down and write whatever and say it is a novel. And I have my este workshop, and sometimes I find that nothing makes sense. There are lots
Mm-hmm.
of gaps. There are lots of things
Mm-hmm.
that don't make sense. You lost your character or whatever. And so I want to bring this my way of looking at a story that works. And most of it is about whatever you want to write, even if you want to write these big, elegant pieces, or you want to write these thrillers or whatever, or you want to sort of be in the middle, like literature, but approachable literature
Mm-hmm.
that means something. And well, you can decide be either one of these three. Happens a lot here in Mexico, in Latin America, the
Mm-hmm.
types of writers. Okay, decide that, but don't ever forget that the most important thing that you're doing is telling a story.
Story. Mm-hmm.
And why wouldn't you want your story to work? So there are a few strategies, yes. Even when it's art, you have to have strategy. And so that's the second nonfiction. And then I'm working on a new novel that's also breaking things and trying
Exciting. Yes.
to recover these pieces of history that get lost because they're
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. And I'm going to bring them and see what happens. I'm hoping.
Well, that sounds very exciting for us as readers to follow your career, because it's very exciting. And so, before we finish, I want to ask you a couple of like super quick questions.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So the first one is, I don't know if maybe you'll remember or not, but which was the first book you read? Do you remember the first book? Even it doesn't have to be the but the first that you remember.
A cat in the hat.
A Cat
Dr.
in the Hat.
Seuss. A cat in the hat. Dr. Seuss.
Okay. Okay.
Never
And
forget, I was terrorized by that book, but I love, to this day, I still love Dr. Seuss. I
yeah.
don't leave my books behind, even from infancy.
Yes, they stay. Good books always stay with you. Which was the last book you read?
Today I'm reading The Murmur of Bees. over and over and over, because I'm working on
Um,
the script, and I'm reading that, just going back and forth, the back and forth. And so I right now I'm not going into new material, but
mhm,
I read the last, and it's in Spanish.
mhm,
Este Tamara Trotner's book. She's a Mexican writer. The last book is Pronunciaré tus nombres.
mhm,
But I have to say that one book that I'm recommending a lot, because it
mhm.
took me away from me and what I do, and from my sphere, right? It was I enjoyed Project Hail Mary very much in audiobook. It was amazing. I recommend it. It's science fiction. I What I do is I don't stick with just one genre. I
Mhm.
go very broadly. I read very much and very broadly, and I think we should all read everything,
Everything.
every good story out there. We should read.
Okay, this is also a difficult one. What's your favorite book?
No, no, no. That's an impossible.
I
No
know.
answer for
Maybe
that. You know, I
one of
do
your favorite.
believe that if I forget one of my authors, he will come back at night and pull my toes. His phantom self will, or her phantom self will come and pull my toes at night as vengeance. No, I do have certain authors that marked me. It's not that
Mhm,
there are no other books that
mhm,
took me away, but this is the first is Dr. Seuss. I
mhm,
absolutely love him, because then I read it to my kids, so
mhm,
it's still there, and I'm just hoping one day to read him to my grandchildren. I love him, his imagination and everything.
mhm,
But then there's also Platero y Yo, Juan Ramon Jimenez.
mhm,
And what the thing is that what I learned, I was in first grade, and I had a Spanish teacher, and I think what I mean is she was from Spain. And
mhm.
Juan Ramon Jimenez, a Nobel laureate from Spain too. And this book was not age appropriate, really. But what I did learn with that book was that if you put one word followed by another and another and another, images get created in your brain. And that was like, I remember that. I remember having these images of the little donkey, Platero,
Mhm,
and say, but I did, it was not illustrated. So it was amazing for me. That was amazing how words are magic, right? When you use them for good. And then later on, Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare, but I love Shakespeare, many of his plays, but I love more the political plays. Julius Caesar was amazing
mhm,
for me, and Henry V. I especially got chills when he got to the speeches, the Mark Anthony
mhm,
speech. I think it's genius, just genius. I mean, so it's important for me. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez, around that same time, when I got to his short stories, and I say,
They're amazing. Yeah,
amazing. They're so
amazing.
good. They start and they finish. They're just so perfect. But
Mhm,
what in another sense, they showed me that short stories didn't end with childhood. You could
mhm.
still
Yeah.
enjoy short stories, cuentos, uh,
Mhm,
as in adulthood, and they were amazing, and they still detonated the imagination. And so it was my first experience with more adult type of literature. And then I read Charles Dickens.
mm,
And Charles Dickens, I have to say that Tale of Two Cities just still resonates with me because I learned to, when I was reading it, I was in high school. I read it and I was, what is he doing? And I didn't have an inkling that I would become a writer, but as a reader, now I read it and now I say, oh, look, those questions were to the point. What is he doing? What is he doing with sending out this little story here and storylines here and there? They seem to not have anything to do one with another, and then he started weaving them, and by the end, you have this amazing tapestry, no loose ends, and that's why what I strive to do when I write:
Mm-hmm.
weave amazing tapestry with no loose ends, and you're on the other side, right? You made it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what Charles Dickens did. My stories have nothing to do with Charles Dickens, but still, you follow his lead, and it's a good approach to a story, right? A sophisticated narrative, different storylines, and then weave them together, and they become one. That's amazing. And
So,
then I
um,
also love John Steinbeck. He writes with so much sensitivity. I think we cannot speak to him today. We cannot talk to
mhm.
him, ask him, but I can feel that he felt his characters, and I also like to do that very much.
So my next question, I think you already answered, is which book inspired you to become a writer? Which one did you read that said, I want to do this?
No, it was just. It wasn't a book. It was a question. It was, well. It was a danger to the world. It's. It was not. I I was an absolute reader, very avid
Mm-hmm.
reader, and I read all the time. But still, that was not a realization I made for myself, because I lived in Monterrey, and that type of thing didn't happen in my time here in Monterrey. The city has changed a lot, but then I have to confess that no, it was not a novel. It was a situation. The world was about to end. In 1999, we
Mm-hmm.
started talking about the end of the world in 2000, in the year 2000. And so I took the time to stop a bit and listen to myself, ask myself some questions. If the world ended, what would you have to show for yourself at the end? And I said, well, I have my family and I've written a lot of things, yeah, but it was all almost by commission,
Mm-hmm.
uh, political este, uh, speeches, and some plays that somebody commissioned, and different things that happened because somebody else asked me to, and I enjoy them. But then I realized, okay, you've written a lot, but what have you written because of yourself and not because of anybody else? And I said, oh, it had been a long time since I've done that, even since the beginning of college, because then life got complicated
Mm-hmm.
and you start to lose yourself a little bit, and you do everything in terms of everybody else, right? And so I said, but what of you? What made you happy? Not in terms of anybody else. Oh, I have to go back to my short story writing. And so I looked up, and there was already a workshop, writer's workshop here in Monterrey, which was, I had never seen one. And I went, and they asked, what's your novel about? And I said, oh, I can do that. Okay. And I said, yeah, I will do that. And the next week I came back to the class, I brought the first draft, not the first draft, the first 4 pages of my
Mm-hmm.
new novel, Huracan. So that was it. It doesn't matter how you get there, but you have to be aware of the right questions and
Mm-hmm.
answer with the right answer.
Okay. What do you want to be remembered for?
right now, I do want my novels to survive the passage of time. Absolutely. And I do want to be remembered through them as someone who wanted to tell a whole story. That's it. And maybe here in my region, as someone who rescued the memory of this region. It's a lot, I know,
Mm-hmm.
but here's hoping.
Yes. And whatever you have hoped has become true. So maybe, yeah.
Well,
And
I do think that one has to hope and one has to work a lot.
work. Yes. And lastly, what do you want the reader to take from your stories?
First, the voyage. They're an invitation to travel away from yourself and to maybe rest a little bit from your troubles, but then also to go far, far away, even through different lands and different languages and different uh, everything, but find something of themselves in that faraway land, in that faraway experience. Go far away to come back with something very, very close.
Well, this has been very inspiring, and I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of people. I want to thank you for your time and for your work, and I hope that you continue writing more inspirational things for the world to enjoy. And on behalf of Street Writers, I wanted to, again, it's a pleasure and an honor. For the people who are watching, I am also from Monterrey, so uh, it's even a greater honor for me to be able to have this conversation with Sofía. And I just want to say thank you.
No, thank you. And it's been my pleasure and my honor. Thank you so much. And I just want to say to everyone listening or watching, keep hoping and keep writing.
Thanks again to Sofía and for this incredible interview. If you like this content, you can subscribe to YouTube or in your favorite podcast app. You can also check out our website, storystreetwriters.com, and join our newsletter to learn about future events. Thanks for joining.